The War of the Titans, the divine confrontation between gods and titans. Who wins? Get ready to explore a world where legends come to life and ancient myths unfold in an unforgettable spectacle. The War of the Titans, the divine confrontation between gods and titans. Who wins? Invites you on a captivating journey through the heart of Greek mythology, where you will discover stories about the gods and titans who shaped the universe. Learn how the 12 gods of Mount Olympus, iconic figures of ancient Greece, with their human qualities and flaws, influenced the destiny of mankind. From Zeus, the king of the gods, to Hera, Athena, and Poseidon, each deity will reveal to you a unique facet of divine power and wisdom. But it's not just a story about the gods. This documentary will also show you the world of the Titans, those archaic entities whose names resonate with echoes of a mystical past. From Oceanus, Lord of the Waters, to Cronos, God of Time, you will understand how their struggle for supremacy shaped world history. You will witness the epic battles and intrigues that defined the mythological era, in a narrative that will hold your breath. Through impressive visuals and detailed accounts, this documentary is not just a presentation of ancient myths, but a journey into the heart of a culture that has influenced the world for millennia. Understand how the war between the gods and titans gave birth to a new era, and how these ancient stories continue to inspire and fascinate. Join us on this extraordinary journey where myth and reality meet in the War of the Titans, the divine confrontation between gods and titans. Who wins? Here, you'll find out not just who wins, but how these eternal struggles continue to shape our stories and our view of the world around us. The 12 gods of Mount Olympus are the most important deities of ancient Greece. With their human qualities, the Olympians were capable of showing great kindness, but at the same time delivering terrible punishments. They quarreled with each other, had affairs, and protected their favorite mortal heroes on Earth, but each had a more serious role to play in the Greek worldview. Thus, they represented important ideals and traits of the human condition, such as justice, loyalty, wisdom, music, and the changing of the seasons. These are thought to have been Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Demeter, Aphrodite, Athena, Artemis, Apollo, Ares, Hephaestus, Hermes, and either Hestia or Dionysus. The story of the Titans. Even though they too are gods of ancient Greece, the Titans differ from the Olympians we are more familiar with because they represent the previous order. They are the old and archaic. After their downfall, new gods assumed their roles, and the names of the Greek Titans were all but lost to the pages of history. The 12 Titans. Oceanus, Titan god of water and the sea. Thetis, Titan goddess of fresh water. Hyperion, Titan god of light. Thea, Titan goddess of sun and light. Zeus, Titan god of oracles, wisdom and foresight. Phoebe, Titan goddess of prophecy and intellect. Crius, Titan god of the constellations. Mnemosyne, Titan goddess of memory. Iapetus, Titan god of mortal life or god of death. Themis, Titan goddess of law, order, and justice. Cronos, Titan god of time and ruler of the universe. Rhea, Titan goddess of fertility. From the empty space of chaos arose Gaia, Earth, Tartarus, the underworld, and Eros, desire. Gaia gave birth to the mountains, the sky, and the sea. Later, she took her son, Uranus, as her husband, and with him gave birth to the 12 Titans, the first gods and goddesses, taller than the mountains, which they used as their thrones. However, Uranus was disgusted by his children, the 3 Cyclops and 3 monstrous sons, each with 50 heads and 100 arms. Therefore, he threw them into Tartarus, the underworld prison of suffering. However, Gaia loved all her children, and therefore did not forgive Uranus for his cruelty. She made a diamond sickle for her youngest son, Cronos, with which he defeated his father. Gaia later married her son Pontus, the ocean, and the Titans took control of the universe. They were the ancestors and parents of most of the 12 Olympians. Although he was the youngest son, Cronos was also the strongest of the Titans. For a brief period, the land enjoyed a golden age under his rule. Vices had not yet been invented, and the land was in complete peace and harmony. However, Cronos did not release his brothers as he had promised, and soon his mother's anger grew and she began to plot his downfall. Cronos learned of the prophecy that as he had dethroned his father, one of his children would dethrone him. He therefore took all his children from his sister and wife Rhea as soon as they were born and swallowed them. Cronos was happy, thinking he had undermined the threat, but Rhea was understandably upset. As the goddess responsible for the flow of Cronos' kingdom, she was well placed to interrupt that flow. When she found out she was pregnant again, she asked her mother for advice. Gaia helped Rhea hide her newborn child. To avoid suspicion, she wrapped a stone in baby clothes and gave it to Cronos to swallow. Cronos was tricked, but Gaia and Rhea carefully hid baby Zeus in a small cave on the island of Crete. War and the rise of the Olympians. Zeus grew up accompanied by nymphs and cared for by the goat fairy Amalthea, who produced ambrosia and nectar, the food and drink of the deities. He married Metis, one of the daughters of the Titan Oceanus and the goddess of prudence. This advised Zeus not to attack Cronos alone. Instead, she went to Cronos and convinced him to eat a magical plant, which she claimed would make him invincible. The herb sickened the king of the Titans until he vomited his other children, Hades, Poseidon, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera. They all joined Zeus and together they defeated their father. Unable to withstand their combined forces, Cronos fled in terror. However, several of the other Titans did not give up their power so easily, rising up against the new gods and goddesses, so Zeus freed his uncles and aunts from Tartarus. After a fierce battle, the Olympians emerged victorious and imprisoned the Titans in Tartarus. The Cyclops built a palace for the new gods and goddesses on top of Mount Olympus, and the famous gods of Olympus took up residence there to both help and interfere in the affairs of mankind. Who were the Olympians? Like the Titans, there were 12 Olympian gods who became the most important deities in the Greek pantheon. Zeus, the sky god who became the supreme god after winning the Titanomachy. Hera, goddess of marriage and family. Athena, goddess of wisdom and battle strategy. Apollo, god of light. Poseidon, god of the seas. Ares, god of war. Artemis, Apollo's twin sister and goddess of the hunt. Demeter, personification of harvest, fertility, and grain. Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Dionysus, god of wine. Hermes, the messenger god. Hephaestus, god of fire. The list of the 12 Olympians may vary, sometimes replacing Dionysus with Hercules, Hestia, or Leto. Before the Titanomachy. Before the Titans, the cosmos was ruled entirely by Uranus, one of the protogenoi, the first immortal beings to be born. Uranus was insecure in his position as ruler of the universe and feared that one day someone would overthrow him and take his place on the throne. As a result, Uranus imprisoned anyone who might be a threat to him, his own children, the Cyclops, the one-eyed giants, and the Hecatonchires, 3 incredibly strong and ferocious giants who each had 100 hands. Uranus imprisoned them all in the womb of the earth. Uranus's wife, Gaia, mother of Hecatonchires and the Cyclops, was angry that he had imprisoned their children. She wanted revenge on her husband and began plotting with another group of their children, known as the Titans. Gaia fashioned a large sickle and convinced her sons to castrate their father with it. Although they agreed, only one son was willing to do so, Cronos, the youngest. Cronos bravely took the scythe and ambushed his father. Cronos used the sickle against Uranus, cutting off his genitals and throwing them into the sea. He then became the new ruler of the cosmos and king of the Titans. Uranus lost most of his powers and had no choice but to retreat to the heavens. As he did so, he predicted that Cronos would one day be overthrown by his own son, just as Uranus himself had been. It was Gaia who made this prophecy come true when she realized that Cronos had no intention of freeing the Cyclops or the Hecatonchires and plotted against him. Cronos' children included Hera, Hestia, Hades, Demeter, Poseidon, and Zeus, the youngest. To prevent the prophecy from coming true, Cronos swallowed all his children. However, his wife Rhea tricked him by wrapping a stone in a blanket, convincing him that it was his youngest son, Zeus. Rhea and Gaia then hid Zeus in a cave on Mount Ida, located on the island of Crete, safely out of harm's way. The return of Zeus. Zeus continued to stay in Crete and was raised by the nanny goat Amalthea until he reached adulthood. It was then that he decided the time was right to return and try to overthrow Cronos. Gaia and Rhea gave him all their support. They concocted a drink made of wine and mustard that would make Cronos regurgitate the children. When Cronos drank it, he vomited so hard that the 5 children and the stone he swallowed immediately came out. The 5 brothers of Zeus joined him, and together they went to Mount Olympus, where Zeus called an assembly of the gods. He announced that any god who sided with him would reap the benefits, but those who opposed would lose everything. He sent his sisters Hestia, Demeter, and Hera to safety so they wouldn't be caught in the middle of the coming war, then led his brothers and the other Olympian gods in rebellion against the Titans. In some versions of the story, Zeus' sisters stayed by their brother's side and fought alongside him in war. Titanomachy. Cronos, Hyperion, Iapetus, Crius, Ceus, Atlas, Menoetius, and the 2 sons of Iapetus were the main figures who fought on the side of the Titans. Iapetus and Menoetius were renowned for their ferocity, but in the end it was ultimately Atlas who became the ruler of the battlefield. However, not all Titans fought in the war, as some had been warned of its outcome. These Titans, like Themis and Prometheus, instead allied themselves with Zeus. Zeus freed his half-brothers, the Cyclops and Hecaton from where Cronos had imprisoned them, and they became his allies. The Cyclops were skilled craftsmen and forged the emblematic thunderbolt of Zeus, a mighty trident for Poseidon, and the helmet of invisibility for Hades. They also made other weapons for the rest of the Olympians, while the Hecaton used their many hands to hurl stones at the enemy. Meanwhile, the Titans also strengthened their ranks. Both camps were evenly matched and the war continued for many years. However, Zeus now had the support and guidance of Nike, the goddess of victory. With her help, Zeus struck Menoetius with one of his deadly lightning bolts, sending him straight into the depths of Tartarus, effectively ending the war. In some accounts, it was Hades who turned the tide of the war. He donned his helmet of invisibility and entered the Titans' camp on Mount Olympus, where he destroyed all their weapons and equipment, rendering them helpless and unable to continue the fight. Whatever the final event, the war that had lasted 10 long years was finally over. The aftermath of Titanomachy. After the war, Zeus imprisoned all the Titans who fought against him in Tartarus, the dungeon of torment and suffering, guarded by Hecatonkars. According to some sources, however, Zeus released all the imprisoned Titans once he secured his position as ruler of the cosmos. All the women of the Titans were set free, as they had taken no part in the war, and all the allies of Zeus were well rewarded for their services. The Titan Atlas was given the task of holding up the heavens, which was to be his punishment for eternity. After the war, the Cyclops continued to work as craftsmen for the Olympian gods and had forges on Mount Olympus as well as under volcanoes. Zeus and his brothers, Poseidon and Hades, drew lots and divided the world into separate domains. Zeus' domain was the sky and air, and he became the supreme god. Poseidon was given the domain of the sea and all bodies of water, while Hades became the lord of the underworld. Earth, however, remained common ground for the other Olympian gods to do as they pleased. If any conflict arose, the 3 brothers, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, were called upon to resolve the issue. After Zeus became the supreme god of the cosmos, he asked Themis and Prometheus to create humans and animals to repopulate the earth. According to some accounts, Prometheus created humans, while Themis handled the creation of animals. As a result, the earth, which had been barren and dead during the war, began to flourish again. What does the Titanomachy symbolize? The Titans represented the former gods of the pre-Olympian order, who ruled the cosmos before the new gods came on the scene. Historians have speculated that the Titans were the ancient gods of an indigenous people group in ancient Greece, but this is no longer accepted. Instead, the mythology of the Titans is believed to have been borrowed from the Near East. They became a support to explain the appearance and victory of the Olympians. From this point of view, the Titanomachy symbolizes the strength, power, and victory of the Olympians over all other gods, as well as the defeat of the old and the birth of the new. A portion of the Titans were imprisoned in a great chasm in the darkest and deepest part of hell, Tartarus. With massive gates made by Poseidon, with the three Hecatonchires as guards, the Titans could no longer threaten the order established by the Olympian gods. Zeus assumed the role of ruler of the new pantheon. The Titans who had not fought the Olympians, Mnemosyne, Gaia, Rhea, Hyperion, Themis, and Metis had important roles in the new order. Some of these became consorts of Zeus and were given a place on Mount Olympus as mothers of the gods. The Titans also left behind more children, the most important being the sons of Iapetus. A part of these allies revolted and received heavy punishments. For example, Atlas was condemned to carry the weight of the heavens on his shoulders. Prometheus was chained to a stone, and an eagle was allowed to feed on his liver every day. The Greeks of the classical period knew of the existence of several poems about the war between the gods. The best known and the only one to survive was Hesiod's Theogony. Greek myths are part of a class of myths about the war in heaven in Europe and the Near East, where one group of gods opposes another dominant group. Sometimes the old ones are replaced, sometimes the rebels lose and are either driven from power or incorporated into the pantheon. Fragments of Orphic poems that have survived have some variations of the myth. In one of these texts, Zeus does not turn on his father in a violent battle. Instead, a banquet is described by Rhea for Cronos to intoxicate him with alcohol. Zeus puts him in chains and castrates him. Instead of imprisoning him in Tartarus, Cronos is dragged, drunk, into the cave of night, where he continues to dream and prophesy throughout eternity. Many of the ancient myths are often reinterpreted as metaphors or seen as representations of divinity from the point of view of humans.